Welcome back, everyone. It's the Shoal Weekly Podcast, Season 2. And once again, we're bringing you another great film along with some pop culture. I'm your host, Joe. I'm joined, as always, by Ben and Charlie. I hope you guys have had a good week. And we're back again recording a podcast about Fight Club. How are you feeling about this one?
I feel like we can't talk about it.
I'm glad we've got that out of the way right now. Thank you. Thank you for getting that.
But the first rule, we can't do that.
As always, please be sure to follow our socials for updates and news. Hit that notification bell. Please drop us a like or a follow. We really appreciate the support. And as always, we keep saying, but if you do have a film that you want us to break down or talk about or shred to pieces in Charlie's case, pop a comment on any of our socials or
I'm not
YouTube
that bad.
comments. Yeah, you are the devil's advocate from Manchester, aren't you? But before we get into Fight Club, which I know that you'd like this film. I know you like it, so you're not going to be devil's advocate on this one.
I don't know, I could be, just to annoy you.
Yeah, just to annoy me. Ben, why don't you tell us what you've been watching this week that isn't Fight Club?
This week, not Fight Club. I have watched a little bit of the final season of Lucifer, or I don't know if it's the final season or it's just the latest season. I'm assuming it's the final season, not to give anything away, but I'm pretty sure it is the final season. Very good. More is very good because they've kind of started to round things off and give you the ending that you're looking for.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's. I used to really like Lucifer, but having watched Castle, which is kind of like just a better version of it, but just without all of the kind of angels and devils stuff, I just didn't quite suck me in as much. But it was still good, still entertaining. There's still some dad jokes and some quips, good stuff.
Have you been watching Castle?
Hey.
Was it not obvious? Sorry,
No,
I'll write it down.
You hadn't mentioned it, that's all. I just, yeah.
Well, I'm on season 3 of 8 out of Castle, so you might be hearing about Castle for a while.
A bit more, yeah.
Man. Just gonna veto it, like I said last week. Oh yeah, but Lucifer's interesting because it used to be like an independent intellectual property, and now technically it's DC, right?
Yeah, it's
Am I
based
getting
on
that?
comic
Yeah.
book characters. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I might be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Neil Gaiman had a hand in writing Lucifer, because I think Lucifer shows up as a character in the Sandman comics. So I think when Lucifer was a comic book, it wasn't DC Comics, but it was like a subsidiary of DC, like I think Dark Horse or something like that. Dark Horse Comics, but DC kind of like acquired all of its subsidiaries, and now I think Lucifer is like officially like DC Universe now.
Yeah, it's like kind of Marvel style at the start of it. Like the first bit, it's like DC Comics, or like there's a little subtitle inspired, or like from the DC comic universe, or whatever.
That's
yeah,
cool.
It's cool. I mean, it totally like it sits in its own thing. If they ever do a crossover, it would be the worst thing like ever. It just wouldn't make sense. So I hope they don't. But yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Chaz, what have you been watching?
I finally got around to watching The Florida Project, which is a bit like it's a coming of age story. Would you believe it?
Really? You watching a coming of age film? No.
But it's set in a housing project just
in
off
Florida.
Yeah, would you believe it? But it's like it's near the is it Disney they have there, or some
like Orlando?
Or that's it. Yeah, but it's set like around there, and it's about a single mum sort of bringing up her kid. It's very like pretty cute. It's a bit deep.
Yeah,
it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to enjoy
Willem
it
Dafoe
as much.
In it, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Did they not come of age or something? Is that why you don't like it?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
they just it was The Sims 4 and they just didn't age up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I thought I was going to. From the reviews, I thought I was going to enjoy it as much as Boyhood, and I just didn't. But it was it's a very good film. Go give it a watch.
I'm going to personally write a letter of congratulations to Hollywood or to whoever made this film in saying congratulations, you made a coming of age film that Charlie didn't like.
Yeah, that's an achievement. Yeah,
There we go.
Wow.
What about you, Joe?
Nothing that interesting. I watched Interstellar.
Yes,
Just
again.
I had a few friends over, and
Okay.
I'm in a new place now with pretty nice TV and surround setup. So it was the first time I had some mates over. So I was like, I gotta get the mileage up on the surround sound a bit and flex it. So Interstellar, I thought that 5.1, that earth rattling sound and soundtrack, I thought it was would go down well, and it did go down well. They all really enjoyed it. Although I did genuinely feel like the sofa was rattling when like the rocket was taken up or they were going into the black hole.
You didn't get any complaints from the neighbours then?
No, all good. Detached house, mate. Detached house.
Oh, right,
we're all good. Sorry, I'm living the life. Let's have a little, and by little I mean 45-minute chat about Fight Club, shall we? When was the last time you watched Fight Club, apart from this week? Chaz, has it been a while for you?
It was with my cousin, so when he came over, so about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ben?
Oh, probably a couple of years ago now. Yeah. No, I have seen it a couple of times now, and it's. I mean, it's one of those films. I think every time I watch it, it's never quite as good as what you remember the first time you watched it. And mainly because of the nature of the storyline. And yeah, we should definitely like just again second warning, spoilers ahead. Like,
did we even do a first one?
I don't know.
Did we?
I think you did it at the start. Anyway, whatever. Spoilers, all right? Spoilers, bigger spoilers.
Yeah. Very famously, Fight Club has a very big twist in the movie that we will talk about later. But if you haven't watched Fight Club yet, do go and watch it now before we carry on, because it, in my opinion, the knowing the twist really spoils that first time watching the film. It's like, it's like if you've lived under a rock and you didn't know, spoiler alert, that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad.
What?
Whoa.
I'll shut up.
Shit.
Yeah, go watch it.
Yeah. I think just the more times I watch it, like I feel less. Yeah, it kind of like sucks me in a little bit less.
I'm the opposite, I think. I like every time I watch it, I find stuff I'm like, wow, that's insanely clever.
Well, there is that. So there is that. I'll give it that element. Yeah. But there is just some, like we talked about a little bit before, and we're not going to say some of the lines because they're quite offensive. And I think on purpose they are offensive. But some of it is just like, wow, like, is that really, like, did they say that? Like, is that in there? And I don't know.
Before we get into a debate about like what we like and what we don't like about the film, and I think it's important to just break down the plot a little bit for some of our listeners. If you don't want to go and watch the film, that's fine. But basically, Fight Club, to recap, it's a story about Edward Norton's character, who is pretty much unnamed for the entire film.
The narrator.
And he's the narrator, and he plays this IKEA-loving, big corporation office worker who, on paper lives a very happy and materialistic life. But let's face it, there's only so much like ordering from catalogs that's going to make you happy. And his apartment ends up getting blown up, and so he meets the complete opposite of himself. He meets Brad Pitt, who plays Tyler Durden, who is this anarchistic, very, I would say, outgoing, neurotic. He's the complete opposite of the narrator, and
idealistic, isn't he?
Yeah. So he when the narrator starts like complaining about having to find a new condo and having to order all of his furniture from IKEA again, he gets mocked by Tyler Durden, and who basically says, the more you own things are just going to own you. Like, live a little bit. And the plot basically starts with Tyler Durden asking the narrator to punch him as hard as he can. And from there, they realize that they enjoy that physical fight, that contact, that, and for the narrator especially, it's like, I've never experienced something so not life-changing, but
you say like real, something
just so real. Yeah, like it's so tangible, and like he enjoys the pain, and And so from there, they start this underground fight club. Roll credits, and basically, yeah, it does just descend into this very mind-bending psychological thriller. So as Fight Club progresses, it becomes more of an anarchistic terrorist group as opposed to just a gentleman's club. And in the end, Tyler Durden is revealed to be this. He had this plan all along to blow up all of these credit card companies and reset everyone's debt to zero and basically plunge the US into financial crisis. So the end of the film is the narrator stopping Tyler Durden from doing this because he realizes it's gone too far. However, let's throw a massive twist in, arguably, I think, one of the biggest twists of contemporary cinema. Tyler Durden and the narrator are the same person.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so Edward Norton's character and the narrator, hence why he's unnamed for most of the film, is revealed at the end to be the exact same person as Tyler Durden, and it's all Tyler Durden is essentially who he wants to be projected in his head. Obviously Brad Pitt is ostensibly in the eyes of Hollywood and in the eyes of magazines, he's better looking than Edward Norton, and so he encapsulates that kind of perfect man that Edward Norton's character wants to be.
We should say that he only comes out when the narrator is suffering from insomnia, so he comes out at when the narrator is having an insomniac attack or whatever you call it.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
Is set up in the beginning of the film, isn't it? It's he hasn't slept for however, what does he say, months or something?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously the film is just this huge commentary on quite a few things really, which we'll break down in a second. I think the number one theme in the film for me is that kind of Marxism, anti-capitalist sentiment. They blow up coffee shops and they threaten to cut off the genitalia of high-ranking officials in the government and stuff like that. And then there's also themes of homoeroticism, which I think is really interesting to talk about. And then you've got misogyny in there as well, and really is just this huge cocktail of really deep stuff that you have to deal with. But
I think maybe to its detriment, it tries to encapsulate all of them, but doesn't really have a strong opinion on any of them.
Yeah, which I think in some cases is safe and kind of easy, because then you don't fall into the you don't have those pitfalls of are they talking about this theme in the right way? And what I mean by that is to me the film never really relies on exposition.
Yeah,
it lets the visual talk for itself, and the script is just this big roller coaster. Let's face it, it's just information after information, but it's not expositional information. It's always just
the narrative.
Yeah,
the narrative is something David Fincher does quite well in a few of his films, where it doesn't really, you don't really follow the story. You just narrative is sort of given to you by who has knowledge in the film and how much knowledge you have about the characters, rather than there being a story, which is something he does really, really well.
And same with his editing as well. I feel like David Fincher relies more on his editing to tell a story than a script.
Yeah,
you see that,
which I really like, but obviously, for some people it doesn't hit home quite as hard.
Yeah. So just for a bit of context before we go into some of the themes of the film, Fight Club came out in 1999, and it actually didn't do very well at all. It almost bombed. It didn't quite, but it almost bombed. And what I find very interesting is that it's a 20th Century Fox film, right? And it had a big budget of it was 75 million, which for 1999 is a huge amount. And so for all the themes in the film, I think the reason why it failed commercially is, essentially Fox they did spend $75 million on an experimental movie from a company that the movie openly expresses that it's against. The film was funded by, if you want to get down to the root of it, the film was funded by Rupert Murdoch. And the very idea that this man would give money to a film that condones corporations like Fox, it's an incredibly brave move. And what you find is that, and for me as well, watching the film without any kind of critical head on makes the film not as good as it could be. Because I was reading a really interesting article about how like our brains perceive film, and the part of the brain that enjoys film, for the visual or for the emotional, it is a completely different part of the brain that processes information. And when you have a film that has so much subliminal text to it, then you run the risk of it being quite an empty film. And I think on paper, it's a really empty film. It's just as Ben said before we started recording, it's just, a bunch of sweaty guys, slobbering all over each other and having a fight. And then I guess some buildings get blown up at the end, and it's a bit weird. And I guess the main character is a bit crazy, and that's kind of it. And there's just no answers. But if you peel back the curtain and you study this film and you watch it from a critical point of view, you see how clever the editing is, and all of the Easter eggs in the film, like all of those little hints that Tyler Durden and the narrator are the same person. It becomes such an amazing film. But obviously, when people only want to spend money on one cinema ticket to go and see it, I think that's why films like this fail at the box office. Personally, I think that's my opinion.
I think it's an interesting one because it's kind of it's almost asking, if you want to rate it highly or lowly, so well, what kind of film do you enjoy? And I think it's definitely unique, which I think is definitely to its credit. There's always there's a lot of films out there that have a lot, have a big twist. But yeah, there's definitely, as you said at the start, is like kind of like the twist, isn't it? It's like kind of pretty infamous. And I think that just, for me, that definitely, it just makes it really, really good. But I'm not gonna like my end feelings on the film. I really love the film. Like, it's still a great film. But yeah, I definitely, I think if I was to have watched it when it came out or something, I feel like I probably would have been like, meh. And you compare it to, it's always tricky. It's always a bit of a trap, isn't it? Trying to compare films from when they came out to more recent films or to older films, because as we know, like film and cinemas, there's so many different trends and fluxes and just different moods of the audiences. Take our example at the minute. The first film that really came out after COVID kind of started was Tenet, and it just kind of flopped. But then other films have been saved. Like Top Gun, that's going to be saved, isn't it? It's going to be coming out eventually. So I don't know. Maybe if you watched it at the time, maybe it would have seen a bit more. It would have maybe come across a bit more revolutionary. But maybe the numbers speak for the fact that it just didn't really do very well. And it's kind of like you said, it's a critical film that you just have to kind of, you can't really enjoy it as like a classic film. You just have to enjoy the complexity of it, like the brain trainer almost that it is. It kind of it's, if you're trying to watch it like a normal film, you just don't see any of the subtle, like subliminal details, which I suppose makes the ending better. But at the same time, it kind of makes the first like 90% of the film pretty boring in a way. Like there's not much there, it's a bit strange. And I suppose it tries to be funny, doesn't it, in places?
Well, it's like black comedy, isn't it? It's
very dark. And it's interesting because they make quite a few. There's a lot of kind of jokes and stuff in there, and humor in there that you maybe wouldn't get away with today. I always remember there's so as part of the Fight Club, they kind of have a very broad range of characters. But there's just the humongous obese guy just always sticks out. Is just because he cries. Is he always crying? Is he?
It's Bob, isn't it?
Bob, yeah. We'll talk about Bob in a bit. He's a great character.
It's just mental, absolutely mental. So
it's the ultimate film bro film, isn't it?
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit higher up than film bro.
But
because film bro is to me like Inception, like saying that Inception is the greatest movie ever written, and Inception is clever, but in Inception everything is handed to you on a platter. It's it's that classic film theory of, well, is Inception 4 or is Inception 2 + 2? and
Yeah,
Inception is
right.
definitely 4, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it a bro film, because like frat boys would be like, oh yeah, like Inception changed my life. It's so clever.
So deep. Yeah.
It's so deep. Oh my god, bro. And it's like, well, yeah, but everything's handed to you, and you know the clues in the box office for Inception. Inception did amazingly well at the box office.
Yeah.
And Fight Club didn't, because Fight Club is it's a 2+2 film, isn't it?
You have to think a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, you really, and frat boys ain't gonna do that. So,
Wow.
well, I don't know. I mean, why do you think it? Do you agree with us, or why do you think it wasn't commercially successful, Chaz?
I do think that it takes a lot of unraveling, and I just think the general public don't give a shit like to do that. Like, why would they? Like, they just want to watch
Yeah.
Iron Man beat for, I don't know, the other guy. What's the other guy called?
There's
The
a few of them.
No, I meant the one in the third one
Captain
that isn't
America.
the villain.
Oh,
That
the
isn't the
Mandarin.
villain. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. Like, they,
Yeah.
you know, they just want a quick escape usually, and it doesn't
Mhm.
offer that. This one makes you think why your life is shit. Like, instead of telling you it isn't, it tells
Yeah.
you straight away that your life is not worth living,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I think
mean-
people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't want to steal your job, Charlie. But
Yeah.
as devil's advocate,
Oh, plot
maybe
twist.
plot twist, right? Maybe
Me
in
and
fact
Ben are
it
the
is-
same person.
as such a huge film, 70 million. And when was it? 1997?
9.
99.
Yeah.
70 million back then. I I don't even want to think. It's probably like double that now, isn't it? What's 70 million worth? Today it's probably like a huge amount. Even bigger than 70 million. But what I mean is maybe the fact that flopped so badly, and could that have maybe just put everyone off 2+2 films, and that's the reason why we have, maybe cinema today and the films we have today. I mean, you never know. It could be.
I don't know. I think blockbuster films have always been around, haven't they? And especially when I still think 2+2 films exist. I mean, look at No Country for Old Men, or something. I'm trying to think of something deep that's been out recently. I mean, I suppose Tenet. Tenet's a 2+2, isn't it? Well, is it? I don't know.
Nah,
Nolan's
Christopher
very
Nolan never
exposition,
does-
isn't it?
Yeah, he never does 2+2.
Yeah, I'm eating my words. Yeah, no.
I didn't look at Annihilation, but did that do well? I don't know. Probably not.
Well, it was going to be released in cinemas, but it was probably
Yeah.
because the execs at Paramount didn't think that an all-female led movie was going to do very well. But that's another can of worms, isn't it? It's
So the way, like, it was pre 9/11, wasn't it? And I think post 9/11 cinema is escapism. It's gone back to like classic Hollywood. So I don't think it's
Yeah,
about. I
okay.
don't think it's about cinema changing. I think it's about what
People
audience
changing,
wanted.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about what audience want, and the audience don't want this sort of film. Or
I mean,
haven't for a very long time. Anyway.
Matrix, 1999. It was also the year of the Matrix, wasn't it?
Yeah, which I
just-
think they're quite similar films in a way.
Yeah, I mean that did a
Both-
lot better.
Yeah. But then that's got the
commercially.
sci-fi thing to hide behind, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And this hasn't.
Yeah.
This is very grounded.
But at the core of them, though, they both encourage people to reject Western capitalist values, wasn't it? And again, this was pre 9/11, and then 9/11 happens, and every American rallies and becomes like the ultimate patriot, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, we like our coffee shops and our Calvin Klein underwear, and maybe that's why Fight Club, has aged a bit like fine wine. It's probably become more successful recently than say when it came out.
Probably see a surge of like people rewatching it and appreciating the values that it portrays more. Now that we're not past that age, are we? But we're sort of coming out the other side, aren't we?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Fight Club predicted a lot of mentalities that exist now. So let's come back to that big theme of like homoeroticism. You may ask, Joe, that this is a film about Fight Club. And what do you mean homoeroticism? Well, guys, there's basically I've read reviews that have all said this is one of the most homosexual films ever made. The narrator and Tyler, they live together like a couple. because the narrator's apartment's blown up, and there's skin to skin contact in the fights. There's sadism and masochism in the films. They seem to enjoy fighting each other in like an erotic nature. Like think about when the narrator beats up Jared Leto's character, like Angel Face, that they call him, and he says, I felt like destroying something beautiful. And all the way through the film, you see like these anti-straight themes. The society at the time was like very on the idea that a male and a female relationship was the ideal sort of nuclear family.
Mm.
When you look at when they get on the bus and they see that advert of Calvin Klein underwear, and Tyler Durden's just like, oh, that's just masturbation. That's not like relation, is it? It's and then obviously, Bob, Ben mentioned before, so Bob's an interesting character because Bob is he was a big bodybuilder in the film, and he got testicular cancer, and he had his testicles removed. So you got emasculation there, and because of that, he actually grows female breasts because all the chemicals in his all the testosterone, he hasn't got as much, and he grows these breasts. And many times throughout the film, he hugs the narrator, and the narrator is just kind of like suffocated between these very large breasts.
As the film calls them, bitch tits.
Yeah. I think one of the first lines in the film is, this is Bob. Bob has bitch tits. And so there's a lot of this kind of, okay, this film is clearly trying to say that there's a lot of men out there that are scared of their budding sexuality.
I think if you wanted to, you could even read the fight scenes as like orgies if you really, really wanted to. Delve into it that much, but
And that there's so many, and this links into the sort of misogynistic themes. Well, when I say misogyny, I'm not saying that the characters are running around hating women and beating them up. It's more a case of there is this kind of subliminal misogyny throughout the film because of the creation of Fight Club. And take Marla, for example. Marla is the only female character in the film, and she's very outgoing, she's very forward, and the narrator and her kind of seem to want to spend time with each other, but then the narrator actually ends up wanting to spend time more with men than her. And this is kind of backed up when him and Tyler are having not a bath together, but he's in the bathroom with Tyler as he's having a bath, and Tyler's like, we don't need any more women. And I just think it's such a weird thing to say, but then it makes sense, and to me, I think the film is really successful when you look at it from that point of view of, are we watching a film about a guy with insomnia, or are we watching a film about a guy who is really struggling with his sexuality, and it's keeping him up at night, and it's giving him like really crippling anxiety?
And he's created the ideal man for him, really, in Tyler, hasn't he?
Yeah, that A, he wants to be, but also like B, he fancies.
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah.
I will say that Marla is quite a strong female character, even though all the shit she gets during the film.
Yeah,
I feel like she's still she doesn't really stay with him. Like there's one point where she just walks out and is like, right, that's it, I'm done with you now. So she doesn't really. All right, she takes a little bit of stick, but she has a line and she knows when to leave.
Yeah.
So she is still quite a strong female character.
Have you heard the theory that perhaps Marla isn't real either in the film?
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, a few things that I spotted in the film when I read this theory, I went back and watched it. Marla frequently throughout the film walks across roads, and cars don't beep at her. They don't honk the horns, but they do at the narrator when he chases after her. She steals clothes and gets away with it. No one even notices.
That's in that, yeah. When they come out of the what are they called? Sport group. They they go, yeah.
None of the Fight Club ever look at her or acknowledge her when she turns up to their base, their house.
Yeah, when it's Project Mayhem.
Inside. Yeah.
True.
None of them acknowledge her. And then I think the last one is she goes to a testicular cancer support group, and no one blinks an eye. So yeah, I mean, there's that theory that Marla represents that heterosexual aspect of his character, and then Tyler Durden represents the homosexual side of things, and the
Okay.
two are constantly fighting, like, for
But
space in his
then
brain.
they both have sex. They have sex with each other.
There we go.
Those two parts of his personalities, which is, if you're looking at it as if they are two parts of his personality, that throws another layer of analysis onto it, which is.
And she only appears in the film after he's done his therapy thing at the cancer group, where he's gone through that guided meditation. It's like, find your spirit animal, go into your cave.
I never got like the imagery behind it. Her being the little penguin and being like, slide.
Yeah, I don't know.
I never got the imagery on that. That's the one thing I never understood about the film. But
would you like to know some interesting trivia about that
Oh,
cave?
I thought you. Okay, cool.
I thought you were going to break down the analysis then. Yeah.
Yeah, some trivia about penguins. No, that cave scene, the steam, the kind of the he blows out of his mouth, is actually Leonardo DiCaprio's steam.
Wait.
They actually took that image from Titanic, and then they sliced it in over the top. It's like this. It's exactly the same visual effect as.
Wow.
So that's interesting, because Tyler in the film also splices in images in the cinema, doesn't he? So it's doing the same thing back to us.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's meta. I like it.
I think there's a lot of aspects of the film that they're meta, and it's trying to remind you that it's a piece of cinema all the time.
He does the cigarette burns, doesn't he? He changes reels, and that was his job. But it does it on the film as well with the cigarette burns. It's just it's so deep. I love it. There's so many little things like that.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Charlie and I we studied Fight Club quite intensively as part of a course that we did, and one of the really interesting takeaways that I took from Fight Club is that it represents two sides of two really big philosophical arguments. And what I want to do is ask you a question. Maybe I'll ask Ben, because Ben, you'll know less about this. So ask yourself, what's more exciting, watching The Matrix, or sitting at home and reading, I don't know, Plato's Republic? It's 2,000-year-old philosophical text.
Yeah, go on, Ben. Which is more exciting?
It's a very tricky question to answer. I'm gonna say you're leading me into the trap of answering with The Matrix. However,
don't be a dickhead.
however, I have not watched The Matrix. But on the other hand, I have
You've not watched it.
No, I have not. No,
Wow.
I thought that'd be right up your street, mate.
I don't know. I've always just missed it. I just need to sit down and watch it.
Well, next week we're going to be talking about The Matrix.
Spoiler. Yeah, no. I might have to go watch it. I feel like I'm getting shamed. I might have to go watch that now then.
No, that's okay.
But I also have not read much Plato.
I don't think many people have.
So let's just go with I probably would say that watching The Matrix is a bit more exciting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the hope, isn't it? Films will do more than entertain. They might provoke an audience to become interested in sort of philosophical ideas that a lot of films present. And I read this book on like the philosophy of Fight Club, and what I really like is that Tyler Durden represents passion and the narrator represents reason, but it's kind of deeper than that, because Tyler is not Tyler. So the narrator is essentially us, like the audience, and Tyler is like a movie character within a movie character. Like, we know it's Brad Pitt, but the fact that he's playing also this, this perfect man. I know this is very confusing. Stay with me, but essentially, take the narrator for example. He's suffering from insomnia. He stays up all night watching TV, and he thinks that all of this materialistic stuff in his life is going to lead into some kind of like extreme like escapism. And if you look in history, you know, there was those philosophers like Rene Descartes who wrote things like Meditations, and someone like Descartes believed that the world as he knew it was like a figment of his imagination. And he, you know, he had insomnia as well, and he said, you know, he was always trying to bring himself back to his senses by convincing himself that his most basic beliefs and rules were underwritten by God. But you know, he was always like, people were skeptical about his theories because they just said he was mad. And to me, that just reminds me of the narrator. And so what I really like about the film is that it's this constant struggle between reason and passion. You can see this in the film, you know, especially when the narrator's, you know, in the kitchen in the house, and 1 second Marla comes in talking to him about, you know, escapism and things that, you know, she's a very free spirit, and then all of a sudden Tyler comes in and he's just this kind of very passionate and idealistic, and he's talking about blowing things up and how sex is just it's just natural and not, you know, romantic or anything like that at all. And so like all the way through the film, it's just this constant struggle. And Fight Club always invites us to ask this one question. To me anyway, it does. You know, it always asks me, you know, what is a human being? Like, are we reasonable creatures, or are we passionate creatures? And the film cleverly expects us to accept two different understandings at the same time. One, that Tyler is a figment of the narrator's imagination, and two, that Brad Pitt is actually a real person. Which, when you think about it, it's hard to get your head around. You're trying to accept that Brad Pitt is playing a character that is a figment of someone's imagination. And that's really backed up by the, you know, like you said, with the cigarette burns and the fact that Brad Pitt kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit. There's a weird bit where he looks into the camera as well. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like the camera starts shaking, but you know, it just reminds you constantly of this struggle that, you know, whenever we sit down and watch a film, are we sitting down and watching it to escape, or are we sitting down and watching it to reason with it, or to have a dialogue with the film, like a, you know, sort of an intellectual dialogue? And that this is just an essential condition to film itself, isn't it? You know, there is no Brad Pitt, there is no human being in front of us. It's just a recording and some lights.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's
then
not real.
Yeah, so then you have to go like a step further down the rabbit hole, and then you say, well, is anything real then? You know, and
That's when you get very confused about
Exactly.
ontological perceptions of the world. Yeah.
exactly. But at the end of the film, what kind of neatly wraps it up for me is that the protagonist's willingness for mutual recognition is what eventually kills Tyler, doesn't it? You know, it's what brings him back from that limbo between reason and passion. And the narrator identifies insomnia with you know, so Plato very famously wrote like this allegory of the cave, where these prisoners were all chained up, and all they could see was these shadows being cast on the wall from like a fire behind them, and that was their entire reality. And so Plato's argument for that was that, well, these prisoners are like us. We're trapped in this world, and we think that those shadows on the wall are real. But really, if the prisoners just turned around and escaped, they would see the world for what it really is. And so the film kind of suggests that, well, yes, the narrator is going through this like crisis, but also so are we, by just the simple act of sitting down to watch a film.
Yeah. Like film is the cave wall, essentially.
Yeah.
Like any film is the cave wall. Like, and we as the viewers are the prisoners.
Yeah.
It's
So
possible.
like the film would suggest that the cure for insomnia, you know, involves bringing the real world closer, you know, similar to how prisoners in Plato's cave in the Republic do. But, you know, and you see that through, you know, the weird editing in the film, and it constantly reminds us that it's a film, and it's quite scary. It's quite like, I don't know. I mean, take the final shot in the film as well. Marla and the narrator are hand in hand watching these buildings crumble through this giant window that looks like a cinema screen. And it's kind of like, you know, as the buildings are collapsing, the narrator takes Marla's hand, and it's as though they're on a first date. They turn to watch the action as though they're like watching a film. So Fight Club up to this point is just bringing you closer and closer to the side of passion, you know. But at this climax, neither on the side of like Plato or Descartes, you know, Fight Club suggests that the right distance to observe the world is is it one in which you're inclined to watch a movie with someone that you love, and it's just so deep, and sometimes I can't actually wrap my head around it.
There's so many layers to analyze.
Yeah.
That's what I think keeps bringing me back to the film.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, for me, it's failed commercially, because how are you supposed to get your head around any of this stuff that A, isn't even done through exposition? So you have to look for this stuff yourself. And then B, how are you going to do that in 2 hours sat in the cinema?
And then C, who gives a shit enough to do the research as well?
Yeah.
Like there's only a small percentage of people like us that are sad enough to do it.
Yeah, like I wasn't, watching Fight Club in 1999, and I decided to drive home and go, wow, to summarize, the film started with this aspect of reason embodied as the narrator, and then Tyler embodies passion, who changes the narrator into a narcissist. And I'm just that's not going to happen.
You need to be English teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What did the author mean when they said the sky is blue?
But yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaways from the film for me are
you can make soap out of human fat. That's quite interesting to
know. Oh yeah. There's so many little like gems of information in the film. Like you can make napalm out of orange juice and nitroglycerin or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
that
actually real? Like, can you actually?
I have no idea.
Try it, Ben.
Yeah.
What I do know is that Fight Club, the film, actually promoted quite a lot of, not promoted, that's the wrong word, prompted a lot of duplicate Fight Clubs all over the US. So the police had their hands full, trying to stop these illegal Fight Clubs going on.
Just people just turning up to car parks and beating
the
absolute crap out of
it's like,
yep.
Wow.
Or like the what did you call film bros, the fucking sorority guys, just making Fight Clubs.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I have to say, my favorite scene is just because I just want to mention it, just to give if somebody's, for some reason, if you're still listening and you've not watched the film,
for some reason, if you're still listening,
there's a particular scene where, so we've already discussed essentially the narrator, when he is in his moments of insomnia, pictures Tyler, the Brad Pitt, and basically Brad Pitt is in the midst of a passionate moment with what's her name, Marla, yeah, got it right. And he goes down to tell them to be quiet because they're being really loud and he can't sleep, which is kind of ironic. And Brad Pitt just opens the door to the bedroom with nothing on.
Glove on?
Nothing on except for a bright yellow washing up cloth. It's just like the most random scene.
Good.
But it's brilliant because we were talking about how the film is very 2+2, but that scene is just 2 plus infinity. It's like whatever you want it to be. Like you could just.
But it's also 4, isn't it? Like it's also telling you exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it's
like you tell me, Charlie. What do you do with a rubber duck in the bedroom? Because I want to know.
He was clearly doing some dishes with Marla. I don't know what you were thinking about.
Yeah,
just tidying up.
Well,
naked.
What a great film. Jeez, I'm going to be thinking about that scene now. I wish we hadn't ended on that. No, do go and watch Fight Club if you get a chance. I know we've if this is the first time you've ever heard of Fight Club, we've completely spoiled it for you. But I mean, well, actually, who knows? Because I think going into the film, watching it as you would a normal film and experiencing the twist, it obviously you're not going to read into a lot of the deep stuff. But what I'd be interested is, if anyone's listening to this and they haven't seen Fight Club and now they go and watch it for the first time, what your experience is of watching the film with all this information at hand. Because I think it would have completely changed my opinion on the film watching it with all this information.
You want Joe to write an essay and send it you.
Yeah.
Please get in touch with us.
Yeah, get in touch.
Like and follow our socials.
Joe will write your A-level exam for you.
Yeah, for the small price of
a subscription.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Would you be interested in seeing, because Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote the novel Fight Club, is insanely similar to the film. So go read the book if you want, but this is a film podcast, so I don't really give a shit. But yeah, the second, and there are 2 further publications in the Fight Club universe. It is a trilogy now, but the second 2 are comic books instead of movies, or just normal fiction books. And I want to ask you a question, Chaz, and Ben. Would you be interested in seeing a Fight Club 2 on the screen? And do you think it would be as innovative or as successful?
I think what would the plot be?
Well, there is a plot for Fight Club 2, and it's essentially that. Well, in my opinion, I think the plot for Fight Club 2 kind of ruins the first one's ending a little bit, because the ending of the film is ambiguous. The book isn't as ambiguous. It's very clear in the book that the narrator wins against Tyler, whereas in the movie, there's that very slight hint of someone's lovely genitals right at the end of the film before the credits roll. So then all of a sudden it's kind of like in that split second everything's unraveled, and it's like, okay, well, did he actually win against Tyler? Is
Tyler still in there somewhere?
Because you have that lovely image of this heterosexual couple at the end of the film holding hands, watching these credit card buildings crumble to pieces, and then all of a sudden you see a giant penis, and then it's like, okay, well, is Tyler really gone? But no. So the comic book follow up to the novel, essentially, Tyler, as in the narrator Tyler, like the real Tyler, it's 10 years later, and he's older, and he's got a kid with Marla, and he's on all these pills and antidepressants and everything. And one day he actually decides he's had enough of being normal and decides to stop taking his antidepressants, and then lo and behold, here comes Brad Pitt Tyler. But the comic book's so weird, like it diverts so quickly from any kind of normal narrative. Like Fight Club is kind of normal. Like there's nothing supernatural about it, or like
pretty linear.
It's pretty linear. But in the comic book, in Fight Club 2, some of the cancer patients who were at the support groups in the first novel/movie that died around that time, they come back from the dead. And like Marla leads like this kind of rebellion in Iraq with some of these cancer patients. It's so weird. It's really, really weird. All the while, like Tyler is trying to, as in Brad Pitt Tyler, he is trying to infect Tyler's son's mind. So Fight Club 2 basically tries to allude that Tyler Durden is not just a psychological product of the narrator Tyler, but is in actual fact some kind of supernatural, like demonic thing that has been trying to possess this IKEA loving office worker boy for like 20 years, and now wants to infect his son. It's weird.
I'm not about
it's really
that.
weird.
I'm not about that.
Neither am I.
Yeah.
So I think if there were a Fight Club 2 movie, I think one, it wouldn't do that, and if it did, it would be terrible.
I feel like I'm happy with the film as it is. I like the ambiguity of it, and I think not everything has to be a franchise, and I'm glad that it isn't.
I think it would be contrary to some of the themes in Fight Club, isn't it?
Well,
yeah,
definitely.
What's that line that Tyler says in the film where he's like, "Oh, this fucker is setting up franchises"?
Yeah.
I can't remember where it is in the film, but I remember that.
It's when he finds out that there's multiple fight clubs in every city, and he's like, he's setting up franchise.
Yeah.
But
which
then,
could be a meta commentary, couldn't it?
Well, that's what I was. Yeah, like.
I was just about to say, it's like the antithesis of corporate life, and it's just like, there he is, franchising.
Yeah.
Franchising a terrorist organization.
That's brilliant.
Which is,
so a Fight Club 2 could either play it really safe and go, explore more of those themes on like a political level, or it could go completely Deadpool and like completely meta and just and then Tyler making some joke about how now that Disney owns 20th Century Fox, they finally greenlit a Fight Club 2.
And they make it like an animated version, but it's for kids.
It's a musical. Right. Every time there's a fight scene, every time they go to a fight scene, they just start clicking and dancing.
They're just singing about Bob's bitch tits. Big number. I think I'm pretty sure Bob's alive in the second one.
Oh right, okay.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to look this up, but
I feel like this is a great place just to round it off before we go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Long story short, we are not having a second film. It's very much happy where it is. It can stay in the 90s.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Go watch Fight Club. You can watch it wherever you can watch films. I don't know where it is at the moment, but I mean, well, seeing as it's 20th Century Fox, I don't imagine it will be long before it makes its way to Disney Plus. So you can catch it on there, I imagine, in the not too distant future. But thanks for listening. This has been Joe, Ben, and Charlie from the Shoal Weekly Podcast. In a few weeks, we are going to be hosting our third festival now. Blimey. Third festival. It's not going to be as big as the previous two, but we are going to be looking, just a little hint, we are going to be looking at some classic British films. Because, Brexit, I guess. No,
Brexit and all that.
No, it's not going to be that bad. No, we're going to be looking at some of the best of British cinema, but more news about that to follow. Anyway, yeah, thanks for listening, and we will be back next week with another film for you to listen to us tear apart, or for Charlie to be devil's advocate with. But until then, thanks for listening, and bye-bye. This is Bob. Bob has bitch tits.
Sorry, bastard.